Happy Tuesday evening, citizens. I'm Devoid. This is my dad, Revatheist, and this is Redacted, a
Oh,
live podcast where we talk about Star Citizen and its development. We're coming right out the gate with the technical difficulties.
nice. Yeah.
While he
So
fixes that, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. So we're joined today uh, by Danny Raymond of Raise Guide, as you can see. Um,
Hello.
so welcome. Appreciate you coming in to join us today. And
Thank
we're
you.
gonna we're gonna be talking about the letter to the CEO. So all of the information that was put out by good old Chris's um, letter that he put out. So
Yeah. So I have the letter here in front of me. Mr. Ray's Guide here also has a letter in front of me. We're just going to take a little bit of time to read through it. We'll stop during significant sections, and we'll chat about it. So feel free to chime in at any point. I'm going to start with the first paragraph, and we'll trade off here. So starting from the top, for those of you who haven't read it, this is letter from the chairman. Starts with a quote: "What we do now echoes in eternity," says Marcus Aurelius. 2023 marked the beginning of a transformative chapter for Cloud Imperium and both of our games. With Alpha 3.18, our first release of 2023, the team delivered persistent entity streaming, the foundational tech that is necessary for server meshing. As we mentioned in the last letter, PES is the hardest part of the work needed for server meshing and is the one that required the most engineering. So overcoming the challenges with this release last year was mission critical. The launch of Alpha 3.18 was far more challenging than we anticipated, and we discovered some issues with our backend database that only were visible at the scale we see on a live release as opposed to the persistent test universe. Outside of this, we uncovered a lot of little issues that come from a truly persistent universe. While it is amazing to come across a wreck from a player combat a week ago, it is not so fun to try and land at a hangar where the last 3 ships crashed and left debris lying around, blocking your landing pad. We slowly worked through these issues and others, but it was a challenging time both for the development team and the community. These obstacles not only tested our skills and determination, but also demonstrated our resilience as we overcame them. Beyond PES, 2023 welcomed the long-awaited implementation of salvage, encompassing hull stripping, structural, component, and repair, accompanied by relevant missions. Traders reaped the benefits of an overhauled, no pun intended, and physicalized cargo system, while players across the board enjoyed many new missions spanning both PvE and PvP scenarios. Carry on, Ray.
Well, that was, I thought all that was pretty fair. It's interesting. This is, in fact, the third core database technology they've had to use. They start off with iCache, with Pcache, and then iCache,
Yeah, Pcache,
and
then
now
iCache.
the entity graph. And in some respects, that's a good thing because entity graph databases didn't exist 11 years ago, it's Vulkan didn't exist 11 years ago. We're dealing with a lot of technology now that they couldn't have put in this game if they actually developed it as fast as they
Right.
originally promised.
You make, you make a solid point, right? So I think part of what's so grand about what is happening with Star Citizen is you're exactly right. A lot of this tech didn't exist when they started, and I think CIG knew that, right? And so what they've been doing for the last 11 and a half years is not only playing catch up with the technology as it comes out, but also building the tech. And we'll
Right.
talk about that a little bit with Star Engine, which is going to be part of this letter as well. But no, you're exactly right.
yeah,
11 and a half years is a lot of tech they had to work with.
yeah.
It's only recently coming.
I'd just like to point out something that I don't know how much. I mean, there are a lot of people who talk about the difficulties of game development and such, but just software in general, right? Just software in general. The idea of taking and creating some software and then, you know, replacing some of the core architecture that you're using, and then doing that again, to be able to switch these technologies and maintain, viable systems, integrated systems along with it it says a lot for their ability to actually do what they're attempting to do. So kudos to them.
It really does. I mean, you and I just spent 3 hours today working on a spreadsheet. So, I mean, yeah.
Let's not talk about that.
All right, we'll move on to the next paragraph here. Try and get through this whole letter in an hour. You want to read this one, Ray?
Sure. Our development journey reached a series of significant milestones last year, all of which took center stage at CitizenCon 2953. The magnitude of this event for everyone at CIG cannot be overstated, especially considering it marked our first in-person CitizenCon in over 4 years. We have been powered by all of your excitement since the very beginning of the journey, and we've missed the energy that comes from spending time together, sharing our mutual excitement about what we're building. The show was an incredible affirmation of all our hard work both at Star Citizen and Squadron 42 in 2023, and kicked off our best Q4 ever in terms of player logins and engagement. Thanks to all of you, and a huge wave in Q4 2023 was our best year ever, with record highs in daily active players, monthly active players, unique logins, and hours played for the year. More than 1.1 million of you set foot in the persistent universe in 2023. The other major milestone of 2023 was welcoming the team at Turbulent fully into the CIG family. Our partner since the end of 2012, Turbulent has been responsible for large parts of our online infrastructure and have greatly contributed to our growth and success. The acquisition allows us to streamline our efforts and formally gives us significant presence in Montreal, Canada, which is a hotbed of video game talent. As part of the acquisition, we gained 2 key senior executives, Benoit Bozinger, the Chief Technical Officer at Turbulent, who now becomes the CTO of Cloud Imperium and the head of our core technology group, CTG. You already know Benoit from his presentations at our server meshing plans at the last 2 CitizenCons. The second key executive to join our ranks was Mark Baudet, who was the CEO of Turbulent and becomes our Senior Vice President, Studio Operations, in charge of the operations and welfare of the 1,000-plus people working at Star Citizen and Squadron 42, spread between our 5 offices in Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, California, Manchester, England, Frankfurt, Germany, and now Montreal, Canada. As I look back on 2023 with a few months now to reflect and appreciate the hard work of the team around me, I can say that our experience at CitizenCon 2953 and the excitement from our community, both at the show and in the game as they logged into Star Citizen in record numbers last year, left me feeling not only proud, but also deeply grateful and reinvigorated for the year ahead.
So this is kind of huge, right? Welcoming the team at Turbulent fully into the CIG family to create the Montreal studio, essentially. I think we need to.
It had been the Montreal studio for some
Right,
time.
they have, right, but now that they're fully integrated, right? Recognizing what the Montreal team has been doing is an important piece, right?
We have a cutout here.
Oh, do I?
Yeah. All right. Now you're back.
Oh, sorry. Recognizing what the Montreal team has been doing is huge because they have been kicking ass in terms of production, right? From my understanding, and you'll probably be able to confirm or deny this, Mr. Raymond, but I believe they started off building the derelict settlements, and they were just knocking those out left and right.
When they made a dedicated team for Star Citizen, their first projects were the hospitals, and then they did the derelict standpoints. But actually, Turbulent and Benoit have been with the company as contractors all the way back to 2012, and they've been very much go-to guys, jack of all trades, really, when there's been problems or some issue that has to be resolved. And so they've been doing all of the things. They have had their fingers in all sorts of different parts of the game and technology. I think the reason why CIG jumped in and formalized the arrangement was that early 2023 was a time of huge and very expensive buyouts. The really big companies were snapping up smaller game studios left and right. And you may recall Firesprite Studios.
I do actually. Yes.
And
Yes.
Sony came in and just swept them up, made them an offer they can't refuse. And now Firesprite Studios is part of Sony and recently had some quite substantial layoffs. So like you this is what happens. You have surges of acquisitions and then surges of trimming the redundant and overpurchased parts. But I think it was a situation where CIG looked at and said the thought that someone else could come in and basically do the same thing to Turbulent that Sony did with Firesprite was just a nightmare scenario. So they felt they had to put a ring on it.
No, that's a fantastic point that you make, right? I remember hearing about Firesprite Studios, right, and thinking like, oh wow, that kind of sucks because there was some doors that were shut there. So I mean, good points there. Good points there. And moving forward, uh, exciting things that you can expect from the Montreal studio. And correct me if I'm wrong, they're working on the RSI ships, aren't they? That's where they're starting to put their capital ship teams and do that work.
They do have a ship team. I'm not sure if it's the RSI ships that they are working on or other ships, but I do know that the ship team has made a conscious decision to focus just on RSI ships, probably much to the chagrin of all the people that have been ordering the Banu Merchantman and
Yeah.
some other large ships.
Various
Um,
Aegis platforms.
Various Aegis platforms, and again, the one that seems to also the Kraken is one that a lot of
Yes.
people have been waiting for. But apparently, there's a long list of RSI ships we're going to see first.
There is. Just to kind of wrap up on that, I think I think it's smart the way they're doing it though, right? They're focusing on the RSI ships so they can build them modularly. And if that's the way they go
Right.
with future ships, then I think it'll become a more streamlined process. So I'm all for it.
Yeah,
As much as I don't fly RSI, I think it's a good idea.
I'll fly anybody. Um,
Yeah.
but I was pleased to hear it too because I had made a suggestion that CIG create a very large ship team in the sense that they work on very large ships. And so, because the problem that CIG had been having, why we've been having so few of the very large ships completed, uh, was because they would assemble this huge team, have them complete some big ship, and then feel that they needed to give them a break and split them up onto a bunch of little small ships and boutique projects. And we got nice little ships from it. But then when it came time to reassemble that a large team to do another large ship, um, it was hard to do because they were all on these little projects which are at different points of completion. And so my suggestion was that they have a very large ship team that goes through one large ship, and then at the end of it, they do another large ship because large ships are the thing this team does. And that they actually break down the very large ship team into a very large ship team for white box, and then a very large ship team for gray box. And so that once the white box team gets handed to the gray box team, the white box team picks up the next very large ship. And so that you would have roughly four large ships in the pipeline. And for all I know, that's what they're doing behind the scenes because
Yeah, maybe.
it's a smart way to organize this kind of effort.
I think so too. And it keeps design languages consistent.
Right.
You know. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
expect to
it's
see a lot of components and a deep part spin at RSI.
yeah, absolutely.
Of course, that's sort of how Detroit works too. You'll see the same component on every single Ford or every single GM
Yeah.
or every single Toyota.
Assembly line, just get it through, get it through, get it through.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know as much about automotive assembly lines, but I have seen shipyards a few times, and
Same idea.
yeah,
Mhm.
same idea.
Same idea. Alrighty. And what a year it is shaping up to be. On Squadron 42, that is taking the game from feature complete to content complete, ensuring the game has the necessary polish and feels worthy of being the spiritual successor to Wing Commander. To this end, the team is hard at work, heads down, driving toward the finish line. I am incredibly excited about how the game is shaping up, and we will have more to share with you at this year's CitizenCon, which will be held in Manchester, England. On the Star Citizen front, the teams are preparing to deliver server meshing and expanding the universe of Star Citizen to multiple star systems. We can pause on this for just a second.
Cool. Two key phrases that I really that I key on there. First, more to share at next CitizenCon, which at least kind of tells us don't get excited about Squadron 42 until at least next year. So there's that, which is cool, great, setting some expectations. But then multiple star systems, not just Pyro, but their inclusion of the phrase multiple star systems. I like that. I mean, I still don't think that that's going to be like in the super soon, but the fact that they're priming us for systems beyond Pyro, I think is encouraging that they're willing to do that at this point.
Yeah, well, we've been stuck at Stanton for so long. Certainly, the planetary design teaming had to work on something.
Yeah, surely they've got most of Nick's done.
Yeah, I once predicted that we would see after Pyro, we would see Nyx, Odin, Terra, and then
Magnus.
And then Magnus and Kellogg.
Kellogg. Okay.
No, or maybe I'm gonna. What is the one where the Murray Cup is located? The Murray Cup is located. The Murray Cup Racing headquarters.
I don't know, but Google can tell us.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that the 3 jump points in Stanton, obviously, they're what are they? Pyros, Terra, and
Ellis.
Magnus.
Ellis.
So to get those 3 done, so that at least Stanton has places to go for all 3 of their jump points, would make sense to me.
Well, clearly these things you can't be completely disconnected. You could leave Magnus off and just take off towards two of the 3.
You could.
Pyro branches out in a whole bunch. But
like
Odin,
6.
Odin, we're going to have for Squadron 42. Nyx, they've been public about the fact that they are rebuilding Levski,
yep,
and Delamar, and then I believe Ellis is going to be there. Terra, of course, because it too is stuff happens in Terra. I'm told in Squadron 42.
Yes.
Ellis, I'm rooting for because it's a very different system, and Stanton, Ellis, and Terra make a good trio of the 3 starting systems you would have. So beginning players would have their choice of starting in Stanton, Terra, or Ellis. They're all good, well suited to being your first star system.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
Yeah. Ellis, from his text description, reminds me a bit of Risa, if you remember that from Star Trek. The pleasant vacation, lush, idyllic.
Rigel?
Risa.
I certainly don't remember. I thought he might, but that's a
Okay.
little bit. I was never a huge Trekkie, which is silly considering how into Star Citizen I am.
Yeah, no. Yeah. The main one that I'm familiar with is it's Rigel 4, which is another luxury planet that people tend to go to. Regardless, that's Star Wars. So back to Star Citizen.
You want to carry on with the next paragraph there?
Where did we leave off?
One of the key milestones.
We're still on Chris's part? Okay. One of the key milestones of human achievement in the lore of Star Citizen is the first jump day, when the legendary human astrophysicist and pilot Nick Croshaw discovered and navigated the first jump point on 10th of April 2271 and became the first human to visit the planetary systems beyond Sol. Eventually, the star system was named Croshaw in his honor. The journey was described in The Jump That Changed the Course of Humanity and led to the star-faring future that we depict in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42. You might wonder why I'm telling you this story. Well, a little ahead of the historic date of April 10th, we had our own first Jump Day celebration in Star Citizen's Tech Preview channel this weekend. From the test of our progress on server meshing and the replication layer technology, we opened our first functioning jump gates and allowed players to test traveling between our two systems for the first time in history. Players were able to travel between Stanton and Pyro via wormholes, with each system streaming in and out seamlessly. For those who are interested, our Versus very own Nick Croshaw honor goes to the Evocati member called Mr. Trash, who we believe was the very first in the community to successfully jump. During the test, it is worth highlighting that we also achieved 350 concurrent players in a single shard, e.g. a replication layer with 2 connected servers, setting a new record for the concurrent players in a single instance of Star Citizen. After many hard years of work towards a goal many thought was impossible, we are now at the cusp of delivering the final pieces of the technology that will enable a connected, shared universe where thousands of people can experience together at the same time. I invited Benoit, who oversaw this historic test as our new CTO, to share a few thoughts about this monumental milestone he helped bring it to fruition.
So I have a question for you. So you're Evocati, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did you participate in that particular test where they had the jump?
Yes. Although my system was having a lot of hang, and I don't know if that was because of the instability of the build or the instability of my C drive. The recovery was excellent. When I crashed, when my system hung, technically is what happened. When my system hung, I was able to halt it, restart, and often I would be in exactly the same place in exactly the same hallway.
Nice.
So the recovery from a client crash was superb. It was clear that they were doing this with placeholder textures. I did a video basically describing the things that they would have to do before this was ready to be shown to public people, and among them was putting in the real textures and particle effects, because they were clearly working with placeholders. Because the jump tunnel looked far worse than it did when they first showed it that very first time.
It's like 80s CGI.
No. It literally was flat shaded polygons.
Yeah, it was virtually nothing. If you recall, Rev, there was actually a leaked video.
Yeah, no, I saw that. What I'm kind of curious about is honestly,
but it worked. It worked. We weren't there for the visuals. We were there for the function, and it functioned.
Right. So it's my understanding that it was also stripped down in with regard to the process of getting through the jump gate. So like the long term, as I understand it, you're supposed to have to navigate through it. But
I think long term it's going to be very similar to what they described at CitizenCon with how you get into quantum drive. Remember they showed that demonstration at CitizenCon of you had to hold your stick for a certain while on the dot until you got established into the quantum travel. I suspect that's not ready yet. They're not showing it yet in 3.23, but I think that's the code base that they're going to be using about how to get into the jump tunnel. Yeah, it was not finished. And another thing I was worried about is that everybody was dropping into the other side of the tunnel in very close to exactly the same spot. And so
dangerous.
Well, it's dangerous if you're going to get rear-ended, right? But it's also dangerous that it's easily camped.
Yeah.
And so what they had promised for a long time is that the exit point from the jump tunnel would be randomized over a large enough area that it couldn't be camped. And so I think that's still a job that they have to do, because coming out of a jump tunnel and immediately finding yourself quantum dampened and being shot at from the rear, not just being rear-ended.
That's very Eve-like. Very Eve-like. Not fun.
Not fun.
Yeah.
And long time ago, I mean, we're talking 10, 11 years, they promised that you can camp the entrance, but you can't camp the exit.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to that, because
I mean, I could live with that.
Yeah, I mean, because you can organize, you can plan, you can coordinate an attack on people that are camping the entrance, but you can't do anything of that nature when when someone's camping the exit.
Right.
When you're camping your exit, you just got a giant target on your back.
Yeah,
Exactly.
honestly, I like it even from like an immersion standpoint that like you know where to go in, but where you come out, it's kind of
Yeah,
like a water hose. It's flopping around. It's like it's kind of
That's a good analogy. That's a good
right.
analogy. It's like a
Um,
water hose.
even if it's just along a line, if they had it say along 1,000 kilometers, but honestly, these jump points are in these giant gas clouds. So if in fact you're dumped out in a random location somewhere within that gas cloud, that kind of makes sense as to why there is this big gas
it
cloud
really
around it.
does. It really does. Yeah.
Now the other thing I hope they're going to fix is that for the test, the entrance and the exit. Well, let me rephrase this: the exit from one jump tunnel, and the entrance to the return jump tunnel. Follow what I'm saying there? Is we're 75 million kilometers apart.
Oh,
Yeah. So if you were going to just do a loop, go to Pyro, then come back to Stanton, you had 150 million kilometers of quantum travel you also had to do. Now I think they did that just to slow us down, because
Hey,
otherwise people would have been going bing 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 bing.
yeah.
Honestly, that's what you would have done. And I don't think they were ready for that level of strain, so they separated the two directions of the jump tunnel.
yeah.
But it
Well,
didn't make a lot of sense.
yeah. We'll have to see how that ends up. But
Yeah.
regardless, even just the successful jump and the large caps,
Oh yeah,
it's all
the large
super
caps
promising.
is now the real thing now what that tells me is that the real thing is eventually going to be the limit on Star Citizen's shard size is going to be the the capacity of the entity graph database.
Yeah.
Whether it will be the limit, since the replication layer can talk to a great many servers potentially, but that replication layer is banging on one big old database, and so it's the usual three things of enterprise databases. Latency, capacity, and scale. Whether they can get the capacity at scale is going to be what will tell us eventually how large a shard can become.
Now, I don't know anything about any of this, so I'm just going to throw it out there. Could they take this entity graph and attach multiple copies of the entity graph to it to synthetically inflate its capabilities, kind of like how server meshing, you have two servers that can communicate to each other
Well,
even though they're not responsible for.
I think that would necessarily require like another layer, which would kind of adopt just becoming another replication layer on. So, but I don't know. Maybe
Well,
it'd be a little weird.
enterprise uh, scale databases already are using um, virtual meshes of actual machines. So it's not like one computer speaking to one hard disk is what the entity graph is. It is it is itself already a mesh of machines working
Gotcha.
to a mesh of hard drives. Uh, uh, Even if I knew all of it, I wouldn't want to get into it in one podcast. But enterprise level databases are a whole uh, other dark science.
Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
So you get to put on
I'm
your
glad that you know a little bit of what you're talking
yeah.
about, because
So you are going to
I
put
don't
on
know
your French
anything.
accent now and speak as Benoit.
I will speak as Benoit Bougesseau. I think that's how you say his name.
Bonjour.
And there you go.
Yeah, that.
Alrighty. I invited Benoit, who oversaw this historic test as our new CTO, to share a few thoughts about his monumental milestone he helped bring to fruition.
And so saith
As
Benoit.
as the new chief technology officer at Cloud Imperium, I'm thrilled to join the CIG family and lead our technology group. We're dedicated to pushing boundaries, and I'm honored to represent and care for this team of pioneers and trailblazers. One of my first initiatives as CTO was establishing the Technology Preview channel. It's a space where developers can fearlessly test large technology changes with players way before they go live, fostering the spirit of open development with our community. In 2024, our server meshing journey is hitting its stride after years of dedication. We are closing in on the original vision we set out to achieve. This journey started long ago with the introduction of streaming capabilities to Star Engine, like the client side Object Container Streaming (OCS), followed by server side Object Container Streaming, lovingly dubbed SOCS, and progressing to persistent entity streaming to maintain the entire game world. Every step has been building toward our goal to support MMO level player populations in a high fidelity game environment of large magnitude. We are gearing up to release the replication layer in 3.23. This is a big deal. It's the foundation we build the mesh on. As a player, you should perceive this specifically when dealing with server crashes, as those will no longer cause immediate disconnection, but gracefully recover, allowing you to continue to play. For developers, this milestone marks the true separation between the simulation and the replication, a humongous achievement for the game and for Star Engine. But hey, we're not hitting pause there. We're charging full steam ahead toward launching our first multi server mesh in 4.0. For this, multiple servers work together to simulate parts of the universe. As a player, this will enable you to visit Pyro through the jump gate, where the jump tunnels transition seamlessly between game servers. Game Shards will also host more players, so you should encounter more friends or foes along the way. This will mark a new beginning for our game architecture. In the coming weeks and months, get ready for more technical preview tests with various mesh configurations, multiple servers per solar system, and seamless transitions without gates. We're talking about layouts where servers are dedicated to entire planets and moons, others focused solely on landing zones or other key locations, with plenty of higher player count experiments. I'm genuinely proud to be part of this team. While we face challenges ahead, I'm filled with relentless optimism, knowing that amazing successes are waiting for us.
Yeah.
Oh 07. So, go ahead. You're about to say something.
Yeah, no, I mean, out of all of that, right? It's the player counts that have me, just that idea that no matter where you go, whatever station or planet that you're going to, whatever city, landing zone, there's a high chance that you're just going to have these places that have like actual player populations actually doing stuff. I might have to.
Right.
Now, the downfall of that is that currently in like Stanton, right?
Sure.
If we had a player cap of 400, there would be people waiting in lines for kiosks. There'd be people waiting in lines at the stores and stuff. The pads will be full at the landing zones and the mining stations that you're wanting to go to. Like, ugh. But that's not. I don't know if that's a bad thing or not. But it's certainly interesting that to be running into these people.
You actually really want to try to get people to spread out to a certain degree, because when they give a 400 player count, you know what someone's going to say? Hey, let's all get together on the exercise mat at New Babbage for a group photo. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll be there. You'd be there, and you'd be there. Because it's fun to do giant group photos and giant battles and stuff. So
You're not wrong.
You in some cases, you don't perhaps want to have 50 trade terminals or 50 whatever. You actually want to spread things out. One thing that I noticed here that this is a little bit of Kremlin watching, is that Chris doesn't normally share the stage on these letters from the chairman. I think the fact that he had the simple fact that Benoit and Richard were given their own sections in the letter from the chairman is a message in and of itself. He is basically anointing who his left and right hand people are, at least from the public facing standpoint.
That's pretty
and,
deep.
and I think that in its own little way, that's why Todd decided that he'd missed out, and probably some other people did, because the fact Chris could have written those same words himself, right? There was no need for him to have Benoit Beausejour's name at the bottom of this paragraph. So they did that for a reason. And I think it was to cement Benoit's position um, in the hierarchy of uh, CIG and in the hierarchy of who's important to the players.
You know,
Makes
that's
sense.
it does make sense, right? I think it also highlights, keeping in this same spirit, um, the importance of just the importance of teamwork within the company, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
know that they say it, and I know that we experience it every day in our own lives, right? But it truly is such a huge project, and it leads to I can only imagine what kind of frustrations and complications they're facing at CIG, right? And so when you're considering a company like this that came from a Kickstarter, building to this level and pushing the boundaries of not just gaming but of technology, right? They have to have such a team that works so well together, and I think that it's important to acknowledge that. So, in that same kind of sense, it's just good to see Chris acknowledging that as well. Other than that, that's uh that's pretty much it for what I want to say about Benoit
An
and what he's
important
saying.
thing is that it takes different kinds of managers to manage companies of different sizes, and not everyone that is fits in or even is good at managing the corporate culture of a 50 or 100-person firm is not going to be the same as the sort of person that can handle an international company of thousands of programmers. So it's not necessarily a dig to say that some rise and some don't.
You know, that's a really good point, right? And something that Cyber has just said, right? To be honest, it's a fitting reward for a man who's largely responsible for making the keystone of the work that is Star Citizen's PU. Pair that with what you just said about a large company spanning multiple nations, right? Um, we're gonna talk a little bit here shortly about Todd Pappy, right? And we'll get there, but
Also, the Los Angeles office,
also the
because
Los Angeles office.
I think they just decided that we've got enough time zones as it is. Let's knock off two. Let's knock off two of them.
Right. But also like having people be there, right? Because
Hmm.
Chris can't be at all four, I guess five, now four studios at once.
Right.
So, having a person in that position who can be there when they need to be there, hugely important. So,
Yeah. My 2 cents here. Um, Along the lines of that whole cementing, these people as leaders with the company. Uh, there's also this idea that it's also him kind of publicly handing off pieces of the vision, right? He may be the grand vision holder, but clearly these guys in these positions being kind of announced as you know top of the food chain have a lot of say in how that vision is executed and probably a lot
Hmm.
of influence on the vision itself. So,
Right.
to be able to say this thing has grown larger than me. I mean, there's still things that I want. It's still my baby, but I trust you to take this aspect of it. I trust you to take, this other aspect of it. And as a team, we can make my vision a better vision. And that's all.
Yeah,
That's
this
pretty
has turned
important.
into something that I don't think Chris was originally expecting it to. He started out building a pair of games, and he wound up creating an enterprise.
Mm.
that's yeah,
You
very
know,
true.
and whatever it's worth, it's something he's handing off to the rest of um, uh, his legacy, literally.
Yeah, he's building longevity into the project and into the company. So
Right. This is his
cool.
retirement plan. Whenever he does decide retirement, it's also his children's college fund. Whenever he
Right,
goes.
exactly. Alrighty. Go move on to the next paragraph here.
All right. As we set our sights on the year ahead, the team remains focused and committed to ushering the community into uncharted territories with the release of Pyro and Star Citizen Alpha 4.0. I cannot stress how much this is an inflection point, as it will allow many more people to play together, but also seamlessly travel to different star systems. All this points towards 2024 being our biggest and best year yet with the universe of Star Citizen. But Star Citizen Alpha 4.0 is not our final destination. And with that, I have more exciting news to share. As we revealed at CitizenCon with Squadron 42 achieving the feature complete milestone, we are now able to bring features developed for Squadron 42 to the persistent universe at an accelerated rate. As part of this, towards the end of this year, we decided to reorganize the Star Citizen and Squadron 42 teams to be more integrated, to facilitate bringing several years' worth of feature work and polish to Star Citizen, and finally set our sail out for Star Citizen's own finish line.
So what this is telling me, right, and this is just a reiteration, I think, but this is saying that they put their heads down a couple of years ago, buckled down, and just got Squadron done, right? I mean,
We griped an awful lot about.
We did. I remember when they came out and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna stop putting these features in Star Citizen first, build them out for Squadron, and then wait until they're good in Squadron, and then port them over to Star Citizen." People were like, "Why? Like nobody wants Squadron. We're here to play Star Citizen." And they were mad because Star Citizen wasn't getting the attention. But what we're seeing now, what we saw at CitizenCon, and what we're starting to see even in Star Citizen now is that move was the move, because they just put their heads down, they got to work, and now we're seeing the fruits of their labors, because now that they've finished all of the features they wanted for Squadron, they're now just taking that bucket and dumping it into the persistent universe, and it's gonna go and we're just gonna
so
get
to speak.
features way faster. Yeah, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Rocket launch.
Yep.
But this is where I was a little bit worried, is that it's going to take a lot more to get Star Citizen ready to be finished than simply taking all the things that it took to get Squadron 42 finished and make them into Star Citizen. If you do that, Star Citizen will be the greatest single-player MMO ever developed.
You said that in your video this morning.
I thought that is a clever backhanded compliment. Very backhanded.
The greatest single player MMO in history.
Right. And so now what they've got to do is to put the same. They can't just take the stuff from Squadron. All the stuff they've done from Squadron looks fantastic, but now they've got to take some things that they never would have considered needing for Squadron, such as org tools, matchmaking.
Huge one. Org tools is a huge one.
Yeah. And so I hope that they're not thinking it's just going to be that simple. I think they're smart enough that they're not. But if they're giving the impression all we got to do is just keep on pumping these Squadron 42 features into Star Citizen, then we can call Star Citizen complete. I
haven't gotten that impression in the various Star Citizen lives and Inside Star Citizens. Jared continuously makes the point that they have to take all of these features that were designed in a single player context and modify them significantly to make them really work well in a multiplayer context. And I think that's an important distinction. One of the things that I really kind of like is the idea that they did kind of set aside the multiplayer mindset so that they could focus on getting features working well and worry about the multiplayer later, right? And I think that probably ended up creating better features in the long run.
Right. And that will involve some things that they'll have to change substantially, such as master modes, and other things that they didn't ever really have to think about at all for Squadron 42s, like org tools, chat systems.
Yep. Org tools. Space Patrol here says It's great to get the quality of life stuff from S42, but science, farming, research, exploration, crafting, base building, and more aren't even in Squadron 42. So
Yeah.
it's also more things to consider, right? Build out all
Yeah.
these features for Squadron 42, but what about the features that aren't in Squadron at all?
Yeah, the
Right.
MMO specific features. That's right.
Yeah, in fact, the next video I'm working on script on now is specifically about what I'm calling the career backlog. We talk a lot about the ship backlog. We have an equally significant career backlog, even larger. There's a lot of ships that were sold for a specific career path, and the career paths, in some cases, many years later, are non-existent. The worst example is data running.
Data
I mean,
running,
how many
absolutely.
how many times are we told that data running is just around the corner and then it's not? Passenger transport. We've been teased that several times that they're gonna now work on passenger transport. Still happening. So there's a big career backlog, and I think that some of the big careers may not make 1.0, and that will be part of the reaction when they finally do open the kimono about the 1.0 roadmap.
I'm so excited to get that.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, anybody who thinks that 1.0 is going to have like everything, they don't understand how MMOs work.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, the phrase "upon release, Star Citizen will have" came out of Chris' mouth a lot of times.
That
There's a
And-
lot of
and-
things that came out of Chris' mouth.
I'll grant you that.
and they are all sitting in the archives of YouTube, waiting for some salty person to say, "Look at here, here's
And
Chris's broken promise."
Salty
and they will be
person.
found. They
Oh,
will be
we will
found.
see hundreds of them. I jokingly in the video I put out today
saw.
had Chris Roberts talking
saw that
about
clip.
the PvP slider.
The PvP slider, such a good one. Oh my gosh. Alrighty. Well, we talked a little bit about Star Citizen 1.0. I'm going to keep reading this letter from the chairman where they announce it. While we recognize that there is no definitive finish line in an online MMO, a little bit of a redundant, an online MMO, and that we will always be adding new features and content for many, many years to come, Star Citizen 1.0 is what we consider the features and content set to represent commercial release. This means that the game is welcoming to new players, stable, and polished with enough gameplay and content to engage players continuously. In other words, it is no longer alpha or early access. Much like we planned out Squadron 42's drive to feature complete and the upcoming content complete status, we spent significant time looking at what Star Citizen 1.0 means and what it would look like to get there. To facilitate this, I am pleased to share that our very own Rich Tyrer will be taking on a new role as Senior Game Director, overseeing both the development of Star Citizen and Squadron 42 alongside me. With this change, you'll start to see a more rapid expansion of features and content coming from Squadron 42 to Star Citizen, starting with Alpha 323, which is shaping up to be one of our biggest releases to date in terms of new features getting into players' hands. When we announced at CitizenCon that we would start bringing across feature work that we had developed and refined in the push to feature complete for Squadron 42, we were not kidding. As game director on Squadron 42, Rich played a crucial role in helping steer Squadron 42 to its current feature complete status. Under his stewardship, Squadron 42 experienced a significant surge of progress, a momentum we fully anticipate will continue to carry us towards content complete, beta, and release. So, the biggest thing I want to say here is this sentence. In other words, it is no longer alpha or early access.
What?
Please,
You won't be able to say it's just an alpha.
please don't
I've been
take
saying
that to
it's just an
mean.
alpha for a decade.
Please don't take that to mean that Star Citizen suddenly after this letter is no longer alpha or early access, because it absolutely is. Right.
Yeah.
This means that
But
Star
it means that we're not
Citizen.
going to be able to, when it happens, we're not going to be able to use that excuse. That's been our
Nope.
and
That's been the safety
along with
net.
CIG's trying to excuse when something isn't working. Oh, it's just an
Yeah.
alpha.
That's been
But
the
we're not gonna,
security blanket.
that goes out the door. And even
Yeah.
saying it's just a tier 0 implementation really is going to start to ring hollow. So
Yeah,
we're going to have it's it's going to have to be, but we're on that track. So,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
just, to me, even the idea that they've sat down and they've put together the punch list, they can start working towards specific goals and start checking these things off. And I mean, if that's really the way it is, and they really have this roadmap and they're able to navigate that roadmap towards a very specific end where they can see this finish line, I think that's super important. Um, Granted, early on, was it 12 years ago? I think they had a finish line, and it just kept getting pushed. I feel like
yeah.
I feel like that finish line. It seems like it's maybe not pushing so much anymore. So they're finally at a point where they can make some progress towards actually getting to it. So that's exciting news.
Mhm.
So the other thing, right, is that they're talking about Star Citizen 1.0. Something that we need to do to taper our own expectations is realize that we don't have the roadmap that they've mentioned, and we don't know when we're going to get it. I would
Well,
imagine. Oh, go ahead, Ray.
one thing, they're not going to try to release two games at the same time.
No way.
No.
Okay, that would be marketing idiocy, and
Yes.
and this is a company that knows a little more than a little bit about marketing. So you have to take a look at the Squadron 42 timeline. Now, Squadron 42 timeline was you're probably going to see announcement of pre-sales and a indication of a release process at this year's CitizenCon. And then the quantity of time in pre-sale, they'll probably want at least 6 to 8 months of pre-sale time, and would they also start ramping up the hype machine. So it's probably going to be holiday of next year would be the very earliest I would see Squadron 42 being actually available, not only for pre-sale but for regular actual live sale. And then they would actually get serious about teasing 1.0.
Right.
So we there's still plenty of time to plan this and plenty of time to talk about this. And I think it's important that we do talk about it.
I agree.
That was a point of my most recent video, was that we need to allow CIG the opportunity to listen to us, so they can say we listened to them. And in order to listen to them, we have to say something. Because
I
if we
was
don't
going to
say
say
something, they can't listen to us.
part of your video was saying that we need to give them something to listen to.
We need to give them something to listen to, so that when they say, so that when we're pissed off, we're pissed off. We can't say you didn't
Professionally.
listen to us. You can't say
exactly.
you can't say you didn't listen to us. Wow,
Right.
There'll be people that get, everyone can throw out their ideas, and some will stick and some will not. But at least it's important that we have the feeling that we had a chance to be listened to. That can do so much to soothe the savage beast.
Agreed. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that at the very earliest, we may see this roadmap. At the very earliest, I think we'll see this roadmap at the release of 4.0. We may even not see it until CitizenCon or later. So it's cool. This is very exciting news, but please taper your expectations because this is still a long ways out.
Right.
Going
Yeah,
on.
think of 4.0 as if it was 5. As if this 1.0 was actually 5.0.
That's a great way to look at it.
That's kind of the time period we're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
Now look at the difference between 3.0 and 4.0 and realize, wait a
I
minute.
mean, we've been at 3.0 for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long time.
Yeah.
So moving on, Rich Tyrer here has a couple of things he'd like to say. If
Okay, I'll be rich.
Yeah, you can be rich.
Frankly, I'd like to take this opportunity to say how great it is to be back working on Star Citizen. Some of the people may already know me, but I was the core gameplay pillar director before I moved over to become the game director for Squadron 42 a few years back. With this new role, I will continue on board to help push Star Citizen to the next stage of its development, ultimately culminating in leaving early access and releasing the 1.0 version of the game. This begins with identifying what features and content are required to create a fully realized space MMO while laying the foundations for future updates. To be 100% clear though, this doesn't mean going back to the drawing board. we're totally changing the vision of what SC currently is. With this aim, Chris and I have overseen the creation of a roadmap that takes us all the way up to 1.0 and outlines all the features and content that we need, and just as crucially, the ones that will come post full release. With my role now overseeing both projects with Chris, and the fact that Squadron 42 has hit feature complete milestones, it has been provided an opportunity to reshuffle the team. This could see a large contingent of gameplay teams now coming back to focus on SC. We have taken the opportunity to move away from heavily specialized teams like actor feature and vehicle feature to more generic gameplay teams that should allow us to be a lot more flexible and shoulder some of the heavier burdens those teams used to carry. While these teams will still be instrumental in shipping Squadron 42, they will now be focused on bringing all the exciting features over to Star Citizen, as well as working on brand new features like base building and crafting to help round out the 1.0 experience. With every release going forward, the intention is to move ourselves closer to that end goal, so that you should expect to see larger updates each quarter, and with many changes to systems that have not been touched on in a long time, like economy, insurance, etc., alongside a whole suite of quality of life improvements to things like inventory, missions, mobiGlas, etc., coupled with totally brand new features and content. We have set very ambitious goals for ourselves internally, both for the game and technology teams, but Chris and I truly believe that they are achievable, and hopefully you can start to see that progress starting with 3.23 and beyond.
So there's something that I would like to highlight here. I am a little bit of a worshiper of Tony Zurovec. Okay,
The cult of
I,
Tony. Yeah, we get it.
the cult of Tony. Okay,
The missing man.
the missing man. That's exactly what I'm gonna
If it's a
touch
cult,
on.
maybe there'll
Where
be someday a
is
second
he?
coming of Tony Zurovic descending from the clouds
Where
on his
is
armchair.
he? Right, that's the question. We've got Benoit. We've got Rich. Okay, Tony Zurovec is the persistent universe director, so he's got a big job, right?
He's
He's
got a big
also
title.
he's got the big title, right? So where is he? This sentence here. So you should expect to see large updates each quarter with many changes to systems that have not been touched in a long time, like economy.
Yeah.
The economy. Where is Tony? Where is the economy? I know that Quanta, yes, all hail Tony Z. Thank you,
Yep.
Mike. I know that Tony Z did make a brief statement after the last CitizenCon where he said the economy's in a good place. We just can't do much until 4.0 and server mission come out.
Actually, it was Benoit Bozinger that made the last statement about the economy that I'm aware of. I haven't heard
He
any
made the
statement
last one
from-
where they talked about some economy updates that they were doing, like some very small economy updates. I do believe that immediately after CitizenCon, everybody that was like, "Where the hell is Tony?" We were expecting him to say something at CitizenCon, and then Tony made a brief statement saying, "Yeah, the economy's in a good place. We just have to wait for other tech to be ready before we can do anything more with it." And that was pretty much the entirety of his statement, and there was nothing more said. And then beyond that, Benoit had talked about economy and what it might look like in some updates moving forward, like increased ship prices and et cetera, different mission payouts. But man, we got to see Tony come soon. That's one of the things that I wanted to say after this here.
Yeah.
This is where they start to get a little bit specific, and I only a little bit specific about what we could expect in Star Citizen 1.0. And I have a little bit of a list here of things that I expect to see. Ray and Rev, do either of you want to share what you might expect to see in 1.0? Not what you want to see, but what you might expect to see in 1.0.
The Kraken. I just want my Kraken, man.
You just went your Kraken. But that's just it. As soon as they start to say what is going to be in what is not going to be in 1.0, there is going to be a contingent screaming about it. And the posts, as I said, will just write themselves, because there's so many clips and bits of YouTube of Chris or someone really talking like promising that these things will be in Star Citizen 1 upon release. There is, I think, a number of things that you pretty much have to have in order for it to be taken truly seriously as an MMO. But they're being quite honest that there will be things that won't be in it. So, for example, I think some of the more advanced org tools might not be in it. Some of the careers won't make it. And each one of those things is going to have people screaming. And so that's why my real point is that we have to be sure that we make our opinions known. I don't think this roadmap is yet set in such firm concrete that that they can't still listen to us and at least make us feel like we've been listened to.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. You know, it's a catch-22. You know, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
The only way for CIG to avoid backlash would be to do the impossible and release every feature complete, polished, working in the next year. Because
Well, there are some promises that will never be met.
never.
And because they were promised under entirely different technological circumstances. So, for example, the 100 visible planets.
Yeah, I
The
think we'll
current
get there.
the current detail at which we develop these planets to, if they made 100 planets like Stanton, you could do a couple lifetimes and never really start to exhaust the content. And so there are, and like the PvP slider was promised and it was dumped, and nobody is expecting the PvP slider promise ever to be made. So there are promises along those regards. So as with life, you always have to have some sort of prioritization, and reasonable people will realize that that's the case, and really always was the case. But reasonable people do not always exist on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, given the fidelity that they have for planets even now, and what's planned with regard to mission content and gameplay loops, etc., I think it'd be a reasonable expectation to see 10 systems at 1.0.
Wow.
Yeah, somewhere between 5 and 10, I would think.
Yeah. Well, we're talking release, right? With more systems to come, continuous release of systems. I could totally see that. And I say 10 because I feel like over the course of 4.0, they have to, we talked earlier about, we're going to get Pyro. We know we're getting that right off the bat. Boom, we're at 2, right? And then shortly thereafter, they're bound to come out with Nix. They're bound to come out with a couple more systems. So then within the next couple of years, year and a half, maybe 2 years, we're talking 5, 6 systems maybe. So, 10 for, release 1.0 doesn't seem all that much, especially considering the tools that they've got to build them, the ability to designate teams for building that content. It doesn't seem unreasonable to expect that they could pull that off.
Right. Basically, they've been talking about having 3 different levels of systems. They have lawful systems. They have systems where there is an authority, but it's like a gang authority. It's let's call it semi-lawful. And then there are purely chaotic systems where it's just wild space. They should probably, for a 1.0 release, have more than one of each one of those. I would think.
Agreed.
3 starter planets that are safe, 2, this might be Pyro and Nix, where it's a ad hoc gang type authority, and then throw in a few like maybe Odin, that I think Odin would fall into the
medium sec.
and the null sec systems, to borrow from another game. So there should be, as long as people have more than one choice of each one of those types of systems, we probably do have the uh, enough to give people to start with. We learned from Starfield that what happens when you really do create 100 visitable um, star systems, 100, and you can't build them out to the right depth. All right.
Right. It's a
What
mile wide and an inch deep.
yeah, they came up with Starfield and went, yuck, because it was a mile, 100 systems wide and an inch deep. The same stuff repeated over and over and over again. Um, so honestly, at a certain level, we don't really want 100 star systems. We may say we want it, but we won't. We want a good variety of well done systems.
I agree, and I think, right, that you make some great points. When I heard Rev say 10 star systems in my head, I was thinking there's no fucking way. But when you put it the way you put it, say if they had at least, 2 to 3 of each kind of system, I was like, that's a good point. So it
And that
seems
gets you
it's
between 6 and 9.
yeah, exactly. And that's a really good way to look at it because I mean 10 seems like a big number, but not when you put it that way. And but also thinking about more and more star systems in the future. Phaedron here says 1.0 with 5 to 8, add another couple per quarter post launch, maybe, because of the procedural tools that they're building.
That
That's
that feels aggressive.
it does feel a little
That
aggressive,
feels
right?
ambitious and might be running to the even with their staffing levels of getting to the point where they would be a mile wide and inch deep. One of the things to understand about 100 star systems is that we have 100 star systems in lore. If you go to the star map on the website, the web-based one, there's 100 systems there. Um, but in terms of ones that they would actually develop to the point where you would visit them, so you can throw out all the Vandal systems because we're not going to be seeing we're not going to be visiting Vandal systems long enough to stop out and smell the roses. And the same thing with some of the other species. Um, and then again, not everybody's going to find every star system their cup of tea. Some people are going to be wanting to go with the big systems that have big economies that have the supply and demand that can fill my Hull E.
I'm
I mean, I'm not gonna.
actually
Nobody's gonna take my. I'm not gonna take my Hull E and take it to one of the planets of Pyro because my Hull E contains several centuries worth of supply for that planet.
I'm going to only partially disagree with you here, right? And Mike is he said something that is basically what I want to touch on, right? He says, "What about the barren systems after we get the first 8 or whatever? That would be major." And I think he brings up a good point, right? If we're talking 1, maybe 2 a quarter, it does sound aggressive, but something to consider is that yes, we have 100 star systems. What we don't have are 100 highly populated UEE occupied star systems, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have a handful of those, and we have a handful of Banu systems, a handful of uh, Xeon systems, right? And a whole bunch of unoccupied or hostile systems that virtually nobody lives in. But what we could do with those is we can provide generalized content that may still bring people, such as higher concentrations of valuable ores or valuable resources. Maybe there's like a
Favorable
gas
colon.
or so.
Yeah, it could be favorable colonization places
Yeah,
that.
favorable colonization, maybe like a gas giant that has a really huge collection of a valuable gas that maybe is only found in that system, right? You don't
I would
need to
agree. There's a
spend
thirst for that kind of system, the kind of
right,
system where the players uh, are truly on the frontier.
right,
Uh,
exactly. So we don't need to necessarily have 100 systems that have 5 to 10 major landing zones and a huge populace and all this. You can have these generalized things, and you could even make them rotate, right? Like we've got this dynamic economy in the quantum system that Tony Zervak talked about a couple years ago, right? And you can utilize that system to say, oh, for this quarter, maybe there's a couple of systems out on the fringes that oh, there's been a gigantic quantanium deposit discovered in a section of asteroid field in this system, and then you start getting players flocking to that system. And then the next quarter, oh, you've worn out that deposit, but here's a deposit of gold or whatever that was discovered here, and gold prices are high this quarter and whatever. So you're driving people into these barren systems. They don't need to be so fleshed out. They just have to draw people in. There are other ways to do that to where you can still put out consistent numbers of systems and then get people in them. Right now, if we got maybe one really well fleshed out, highly populated system in a year or two, I would feel good about that. Definitely not one per quarter, but if we got Terra upon release, and then afterward maybe we got like in a year or so after that, 1 year into Star Citizen 1.0, we got the Cathcart system with Spider. That might be cool, right? And then a year
Mhm.
after that, we got another populated system that had a significant place,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of where I'm thinking,
So
right? Is
I was just going
In
to say, I think
truth,
as a supplement to that, there's also the possibility of having temporary systems available through unstable wormholes, right? Through unstable jump points that exist for a while, procedurally generated. That they get that procedural system to such a state that it can create something that they're proud of. Boom, procedurally generated. It's there for a week, a month. You can go there, and then jump point collapses. Ah, well, it's gone. And that's part of the some of the data runner stuff too, where you find these and you can sell those jump point coordinates to people. And I don't know. I think that would go a long way to kind of supplementing the fact that if they don't have a lot of manually built, fleshed out systems, that's a way that they can create additional content without having to worry too much about, oh, well, we've got to make another 50 systems.
and another point is that at release, what do we have? We have a whole bunch of beginner players. Even the experienced players are going to be wiped, and maybe they'll have a couple $1 million from a couple million credits from referrals and stuff. So they'll have a little bit of a head up, but everybody's going to be back to um, getting their first million UEC. So what you mostly need at launch are lots of places for beginner players to get going. So you probably need you don't need at launch so many advanced planets that you have to have a whole lot of skills and a whole lot of fleet build up. You need to have a good selection, an interesting selection of starter planets, because everybody's going to be a starter for the first at least a few months. So it's so there's a natural progression of what people will be looking for in new star systems. Half year in, people are going to be looking for more of the wild and woolly place that a very sophisticated org might want to set up a camp and exploit at.
You bring up something that is a perfect segue into something else that I wanted to say. In that, part of what I think needs to be included in Star Citizen 1.0 to back your point of tons of new players coming in is that we need to have a significantly more fleshed out ground gameplay system, right? There is not nearly enough to do on the ground, I think, to keep you in Lorville for a significant period of time. There's not enough to do to keep you in Area 18 for a significant period of time. All these landing zones are right now are places to buy stuff and go to your ship, right? And it has been said, and I know that not everything that has been said is going to hold true on release, right? So take this with a grain of salt. It has been said that the goal is to keep players in their starting location or on their starting planet for a significant amount of time to allow there to be enough content on that planet to where getting in space, getting a spaceship, flying out to space and leaving your planet is a much bigger deal than it is now. And so I think that we need to see a lot more of that ground content, maybe missions, maybe things you could do with your org, right? Just things to keep you on the ground. Just to kind of segue off what you were saying. So
Hmm. I I'm getting a lot of pushback on my thoughts in the chat there.
I'm reading what Cyber is saying.
Yeah, he's probably right. I mean, I'm probably allowing my imagination to fuel my pipe dreams, but whatever, it's fine. We'll get what we get.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna.
But in terms of trying to find and think of a need for data running, that they've been uh, trying and not succeeding very well in terms of
I
what
think
is the real world need for a white hat data runner.
I can tell you, right? And I will. I'll make this quick. I'll make it simple, right? Information can only travel as fast as the speed of light, right?
Hmm.
And it wouldn't be so hard to put it into a gamification sense that that information cannot travel through wormholes, right?
Right.
So if you're trying to
That
take
the jump tunnels
information,
allow us to travel faster than the speed of light. It allows information to travel faster than the speed of light.
exactly, but you have to have a vessel to take that information from one system to another, right? So it's not so unfathomable for me to think that if you want to take, broadcast something from one system to the next, you have to put that information on something physicalized, take it through the jump gate, and then you could broadcast it, right? So that seems a simple enough reason to make data running work. And you could have simple missions. You could have, starter missions be like, "Hi, I'm a radio show from Stanton, and I'd like to broadcast to Magnus." You basically hire a newbie in a fucking Reliant Mako to take this broadcast and go from Stanton to Magnus and rebroadcast, right? It could be
Mhm.
so simple, and it's a really easy way to get the ball rolling on data running. So many ways to do it, I think. So I don't think that's going to be a problem at all.
Interesting.
My own thoughts. I'm going to move on and read. We're almost done with the letter. We've got just a couple more segments left. So I'm going to start reading again. Working in tandem, Rich and I will continue to establish the strategic vision to bring to life the intended Star Citizen gameplay experience. As Rich said, over the past few months, our teams have been busily planning the upcoming major milestones for the persistent universe, culminating in what we refer to as Star Citizen 1.0. As that roadmap comes together and becomes validated, we look forward to sharing with you both its vision and executional plan later this year. As part of this development reorganization, we have made a few significant changes. From personal standpoint, I have moved to Austin, Texas from Los Angeles to be closer in time zone to our main development operations in Manchester, Frankfurt, and Montreal. I am spending significant time at our largest studio in Manchester with almost 600 staff as I sit with Rich and the teams working toward completion on Squadron 42 and Star Citizen. As part of this, we made the difficult decision to ask the Los Angeles development team, which had increasingly been providing support for the main development teams based in Manchester, to relocate to join other teams, primarily in Manchester, but also in Austin and Montreal. Los Angeles, while shrinking, will still be an important office for the company, but one focusing on a business support role with marketing, finance, legal, and HR. As part of this reorganization, we sadly waved goodbye to the Persistent Universe live director, Todd Pappy, as he had moved back to the US from the UK last year for family reasons. And after much soul searching, I determined that we cannot afford to have this role remote from the main team in Manchester for a good portion of the year. It is a sad moment as Todd worked diligently for the last 9 years on Star Citizen, making many important contributions and providing excellent leadership of his teams. I wish him the best of luck and look forward to seeing what he does next. I will miss the sunny skies and beaches of Los Angeles, but Star Citizen and Squadron 42 take precedence. The journey is longer and more difficult than I anticipated 11 and a half years ago, but the final destination is so much more exciting and fulfilling. I would have never in my dreams expected to have the opportunity to build something on the scale and ambition of Star Citizen. And because of this, uh, feel incredibly blessed by all of your support, and I am determined to finish strong. In a marathon, they say the last mile is the hardest, But to quote the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, what we do now echoes in eternity. I am looking forward to you getting your hands on Star Citizen Alpha 323 soon, where you will finally be able to experience many features we have been hard at work on for the past couple of years, which will then lead into Invictus launch week in May. As a lead up to Invictus, we have prepared a series of missions to earn your UEE Civilian Defense Force stripes and potentially earn an incredibly powerful and unprecedented in game upgrade if you complete all of them, so you are ready to face Xenothreat in a more personal manner. So, two big things to take away, one of which we kind of already talked about. Todd Pappy, no longer with the company. Kind of sad news. As far as I understand, he moved back to stay with his family. He's in Washington State. He just couldn't be in UK. But it's understandable because, as we talked about, it's hard to have such a high-ranking managerial position to be remote. It's important to have someone there. So, as upsetting as it is, I think the PU live director title going to Tony Zervek, I think is in good hands. So, crossing my fingers for that. Otherwise, the Anvil Hornet F7A Mark II is going to be that in-game upgrade that was just
Well, we
talked
can
about.
already buy it, so I think
Yes.
it might actually be something else.
Well, so
The 7A? I don't think you can buy the 7A.
you can.
Oh, I'm buying the.
Can
We're
you?
buying the 7C Mark II. I don't know.
Well, so
Uh,
here's the thing. You have the F7C. You
mhm.
can earn the F7A, and correct me if I'm wrong, chat. You can earn the F7A Mark II upgrade by completing the 5 overdrive missions.
No. You can earn it by completing all of the mission sets that they put out between now and Invictus. This is just the first set.
I see.
At least that's my
Gotcha.
understanding, right? So this is like there's more sets of missions coming. So it's
Gotcha.
going to be a bit
Okay.
of a slog to get through them all.
But
And
you can complete all of
my
them to earn
experience
the
of trying to do
F7A.
the first of the data missions is that it's hard to do just by yourself. It is a tough
I
solo.
got that sense. I
Yeah,
got
it
that
Yeah.
sense.
So
It
so
is.
so find a friend. I know that may be hard for some people. Find a friend and complete them together. It's a whole lot easier with Fitz 2. The thing that I found curious about this paragraph was buried in the details and consisted of 3 words: that Chris was moving from Los Angeles.
Yeah, to Austin.
Not
I'm going to go visit him.
no, but I thought he had moved to Manchester.
So did I,
Yeah,
actually.
I thought he
Didn't
was in
we
England.
had that announcement with Chris and Sandy, and this is exciting opportunity for our family, and we're going to all be going with Chris to Manchester. We're all moving to Manchester, and
Because they
now
took all the content teams, or not the content, but like
Yeah, they
the
sent
social
Jared to
media teams.
Manchester.
Jared's in
Yeah.
Manchester.
yeah, right. But yeah, but apparently, I imagine what happened was Chris got an apartment, but there was something behind the scenes that the wife and family, maybe they couldn't get visas, maybe they couldn't get citizenship, they couldn't get, there's all sorts of things going. Maybe they just didn't like the weather in Manchester. Which is
Go figure.
one thing you can say about Austin and Los Angeles is that they're share a dry southwest climate. All right, and so it could be as simple as that. But it was surprised to see the words that he was moving from Los Angeles.
Another one of those broken promises. Thanks, Chris. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So we're coming to a close here. There's just one more little section that I'm gonna read. It's closing words. Ray, would you do the honors?
The driving force behind our success is our extended team. Each and every one of you. Together, we have built a community that will not only plays a crucial role in our development, but also embodies our shared passion for the Star Citizen universe. It is you who has propelled us forward. Without your passion, your willingness to test, to be determined to be undeterred by bugs and crashes, to be vocal in your thoughts, and stamina for the long term and for long and windy road, there would be no Star Citizen or CIG. You were there for the iconic helmet flip at the opening of the hangar doors for the first time at Alpha 3 0.8. Together, we will explore the vast expanses of the persistent universe for the first time in Alpha 2.0, and you are on board for the inaugural planetary landing in Alpha 3.0. And soon you will be leaving the Stanton system as we venture to the lawless wasteland of Pyro system in Alpha 4.0, thanks to server meshing. And beyond this, Star Citizen 1.0 twinkles on the horizon. The future has never been so bright, and I couldn't be happier taking this journey with all of you. Chris Roberts, founder and CEO. And remember, they said right there, your passion, your willingness to test, to be undeterred by bugs and crashes, and to be vocal with your thoughts. So there's your invitation, folks.
Full circle.
Say what you want. Please say what it is you do and do not want, and what's okay to leave out of 1.0. This is the time where I believe Star Citizen really needs to be able to have our input so that when push comes to shove, they can say they've listened to our input.
I agree completely, right? There's one thing that I do want to kind of say in tandem with that, in that you do need to be vocal, right? But there are also proper ways to do it. If you just take to social media and just complain, they're not going to listen to you. If you have legitimate ideas, if you have valid concerns, actual comments you want to make, then do take to social media, take to Spectrum, Twitter, what have you, any platform that you need to take to. But it's important to structure what you have to say in at least a semi-professional way, because then they'll actually take you seriously, right? If you're just out there crying about it, they're going to ignore you, and I would too. So do be vocal. In short, just present it properly. That's the key here.
Yeah, I mean, one of my personal rules is never complain without at least having in the back of your mind solid, constructive way of how it could have been done better. Because without that,
Exactly.
you're just complaining.
Exactly. Absolutely. Ray, Rev, either of you have anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up this podcast?
No, just want to say thanks again for Danny joining us today. Go out, check out his channel on YouTube. Feel free to.
Yeah, Danny, where can we find you?
It's on YouTube. Just Google Ray's Guide, and I'm sure you'll get some of my videos. Appreciate subscribers and memberships. We've got, like a lot of big channels, there's regular giveaways. So if you don't want to start the game in an Aurora, you can hope to be lucky and win some nice ships. It seems to be the core of how to build a YouTube channel is give stuff away.
Give stuff away. Give stuff away. Maybe we'll have to do some of that.
Yeah.
Twitch is less about giving things away. It's more about having a brand.
Well, if CIG would set up some drops, then maybe we could do something.
Oh well, yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm still waiting. I am still waiting for some some giveaway as of right now, I have paid full price for every ship I've given away.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's just about it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. If you would like to carry on the discussion after this, then come join our Discord. We're at discord.gg/pfcs. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We're not hugely active yet, but we're working on it. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching and have a great evening.
Catch you next time.
See you in the verse.